Have you ever wondered about the creepy, paranormal, and creepy stories that have happened? What about the ones in Mississippi? Well, Mississippians are naturals when it comes to storytelling, but they don't tell the ones that happen in Mississippi. Why is that? Is it because they don't want to disturb the minds of youngsters? Well, today I'm going to do just that. In my speech today, I'll be going over the 3 top haunted places in Mississippi: Stuckey's Bridge, King's Tavern, and McRaven Home. Along with these, I'm going to detail their background history, why it's haunted, and how it's used in society today. So let's start off with Stuckey's Bridge. Stuckey's Bridge isn't called Stuckey's Bridge because it was built before it happened. Stuckey was a member of the Dalton Gang, notorious for killing, murdering, and torturing their victims before ending their life. Now, Stuckey found a small spot just outside Meridian, Mississippi, where he found a perfect place to build an inn. He built this inn so that wandering people along Meridian and the Natchez Trace could go to it and spend the night. He would go outside with a lantern in his hand and welcome his guests inside. However, people inside didn't know about the more sinister plans he had in store for them. When they had all gone to bed, Stuckey would go inside their rooms, kill them, and steal their stuff, then dump their body into the Chunky River. Now, why is it haunted? Well, before the bridge was built, Stuckey's evil plans had been found out. He had been caught. When the bridge had been built, Stuckey's Bridge, his body was hung over the railings and he died. Later on, his body was cut from the railings and fell into the Chunky River below. People say that they can often see an apparition walking along the Chunky River holding a lantern. Some people say that they see an apparition of a man hanging from the railings and then hear a splashing sound, which could be his body falling. Another man had a close-up experience of Stuckey, saying that he actually pushed him off the bridge. Now, today, the bridge is around 112 feet long, but it's not used. When it had been remodeled for carriages and people to walk on to get across the river, the construction workers noticed that a lot of bodies were floating or sinking at the bottom of the Chunky River. It had been later discovered that it might have been Stuckey's victims. Today, a lot of people go to there just to experience these supernatural beings or even to just get a glimpse of the bridge. But it's not used by cars or walking, and you can't reach the other side of it anymore. Now that you've had a taste of one paranormal, let's move on to something a little bit more evil. King's Tavern. King's Tavern is my favorite story. The history behind it is that it had been built as a blockade for Soviet unions, but it was later demolished and not used by them anymore. Instead, another person came and bought it and turned it into a post office, an inn, and a restaurant. Why it's haunted is a number of reasons. One of the reasons was when the Harp Gang, another notorious killing machines, came into the Natchez Trace where the inn was, and one of the Hart brothers was extremely drunk and went upstairs to the attic. In the attic, a mother and a baby were staying there. The Hart brother, notorious for killing and annoyed with the crying child, picked the child up by its feet and swung it across the room, and it later died by landing on its head. He later then went down back to the bar and drank some more. The owner of the inn later hired a pretty 16-year-old girl to be a server, Madeline. Madeline had been seduced by the owner, and later they began a hot, passionate affair. When his wife found out about the affair, some say that she ordered Natchez gang's orders to kill her, or she killed her herself. Madeline was murdered and then bricked up in the chimney of the upstairs room. Her body was later discovered when the renovations had started, but had been reburied. During these renovations, a lot of people came across bodies and daggers. However, the apparition of Madeline can still be seen. She says that it's playful. Some servers say that she just does it for fun and for giggles, knocking bottles off shelves, pouring water from the ceilings and onto the floors, opening doors, and then when someone calls her name, shutting them again. However, there's one more apparition that can be seen that has a more evil aura to him. Some people say that he was just one of the Hart brothers or just another victim. His aura comes across evil because he's seen in pictures taken by people in the background, and he lights fires and throws things across the room, but not in the way that Madeline's playful behavior is. Today, the inn is used as a restaurant where you can go in and eat bread and cocktails and enjoy the scenery. However, there's no promises you won't see something else while you're there. The last place I'm going to tell you about is one of the haunting places, with over 5 murders, the death of a young child, and many, many, many soldier deaths. The McRaven Home. Now, the McRaven Home had been built in 3 separate centuries. First in the 1700s with just a small room, 1800s where it had been built with another story, a patio, and porch, and a kitchen, and then lastly, later on in the 1800s, early 1900s, it had been built with a wraparound porch, a big backyard, and a few more rooms added to it. These rooms were built by 3 separate people who, surprisingly, still haunt the area today. The first person, Andrew Glass. He hid inside of the house when it was built because he had been a notorious thief. However, he later died in the house because he was afraid to go out, but his body was never recovered. The next man who bought the house had a young wife named Elizabeth. Elizabeth was 15 years old, and while they were living in the house, became pregnant. However, during childbirth, she died. The last person who had bought the house escaped the war that had been happening during that time, but was later killed by the troops just a year later. Today, people say that they can still hear the wailing of a crying baby, Elizabeth walking the halls, Andrew Glass, and the last person who had bought the house standing upon the balcony watching over the house that he had so calmly built. Today, the McRaven Home is used today just as a paranormal experience. You can go there for tours, history tours, ghost tours, you can do private tours, and there's even a souvenir shop. Because of this being the most haunting place in Mississippi, it's no wonder why they turned it into a tour. For such a low cost, almost every single day, you can go there and experience the ghosts for yourself. Now, to end my speech, I've given you 3 different places on the top list of the haunted places in Mississippi, each with historic background, why they're haunted, and if they're still used today. Although many of us will never experience these haunting experiences for ourselves, that doesn't mean they won't haunt us in the dark.